Here's something your brain does every single night, completely without asking you. It builds a whole world. People, places, weather, a plot that almost holds together. You star in it. You feel real fear, real joy, sometimes real grief, in a place that does not exist and never did. And then, somewhere between the alarm and the bathroom mirror, your brain takes that entire world and quietly throws it out. Not by accident, on purpose, with a system built specifically for the job. So the question I want to sit with today isn't really why you forget your dreams. It's older and stranger than that. At some point, deep in our history, the brain settled on a kind of rule. Whatever happens in a dream does not get to stay. So when did that happen? And honestly, why would it? Stay with me, because the answer quietly pulls apart something you've probably assumed your whole life. That remembering is the normal setting and forgetting is the glitch. With dreams, it turns out, it's the other way around. And once you see why, you'll never fully trust the word forgetting the same way again. So let's start with what's actually going on, because the scale of it is a little ridiculous. On a normal night, you'll move through 4, maybe 6 separate dreams. Some are short, some run long enough to have their own beginning, middle, and that part where it gets genuinely weird. Stack that up across a whole life and you get something like 6 years spent dreaming. 6 years. An entire childhood's worth of lived experience happening right behind your eyes, and you can recall almost none of it. Now, the easy explanation is the one we all reach for. Bad memory, rough sleep. You meant to write it down and didn't. But that's not what's going on. The forgetting, really, isn't you failing to hold on to something. It's your brain spending real effort to let it go. And the first time you actually sit with that, it's kind of unsettling. You know this feeling, even if you've never named it. You wake up, and for one bright second, it's all still there. You were somewhere. Someone said something that mattered. There was a room, a color, a feeling you really want to keep. And you reach for it. The way you'd reach for a word stuck on the tip of your tongue. And you can feel it draining out of your hands while you reach. By the time you've sat up, there's just a shape where the dream was, and then not even that. We treat that little morning evaporation as normal, barely worth noticing. But what you're feeling in that moment isn't a weak memory fading on its own. It's closer to a hand wiping a whiteboard clean, in real time, while you stand there watching. So to see why, picture a small recording studio working the night shift. The dream is the performance. It's loud, it's vivid, the band is absolutely going for it. And normally, in any studio, there's an engineer at the desk whose whole job is to hit record. In your brain, that engineer is basically a chemical called norepinephrine. All through your waking day, it's there at the board, leaning on the record button, helping stamp save this onto the things that matter. Here's the catch, though. The moment you drop into REM sleep, the stage where your most vivid dreams play out, the engineer clocks out. Researchers who study sleep have found that the small brain region supplying norepinephrine goes almost completely quiet during REM. Meanwhile, a different chemical, acetylcholine, floods in and turns the lights all the way up. So the show is dazzling, the speakers are blasting, and the one person who could have pressed record went home hours ago. The dream plays to an empty booth. So that's the first reason nobody ever hands you the tape. But your brain doesn't just quietly fail to record, it actively walks in and deletes. Okay, and this is where it gets genuinely strange. Back in 2019, a study published in the journal Science, run by Japanese and American research teams, went looking for the off switch. They were working with mice, so keep that in the back of your mind. This is the part where we have to be a little careful about leaping straight to humans. But what they found is hard to shake. Deep in a region called the hypothalamus, there's a specific group of neurons that switch on mainly during REM sleep. And these neurons reach right down into the hippocampus, the part of the brain that files away new memories. When the team switched these neurons off during REM, the mice remembered more. When they switched them on, memory got worse. Turn them off while the animal was simply awake, and nothing changed. Only during dream sleep. Think about that for a second. This isn't forgetting as some lazy side effect. There appears to be dedicated circuitry whose entire job, during the exact window when you're dreaming, is to move through and wipe. A cleanup crew that only clocks in while the studio is recording the very thing it's about to erase. Now there's one more piece, and it's the one that tips this from a quirk into something that looks a lot like design. The part of your brain that would normally make sense of all this. The prefrontal cortex, the planner, the editor, the bit of you that turns a messy experience into something filed and findable, is largely offline while you dream. Brain imaging shows it powers way down during REM. That, by the way, is a big part of why dreams feel so strange to begin with their melting logic and their cast of people who are somehow your old teacher and also your dog. There's no editor in the room to raise a hand and say, "Hang on, this doesn't add up." And without that editor awake, even the footage that does survive has nowhere tidy to land. We actually know how much that region matters from a quieter, sadder line of evidence. People with certain kinds of damage near the white matter at the front of the brain can stop reporting dreams altogether. The lights in the studio just never come up again. So put those three together. No engineer recording, a cleanup crew actively deleting, no editor awake to file. So given all of that, the real surprise isn't that you forget your dreams. Honestly, it's that you ever hold on to a single one. So how does any dream survive at all? Well, here's the part that genuinely shifted how I think about this. According to one leading model, the dream you do remember isn't the important one, or the meaningful one, or the one your deeper self was supposedly trying to send you. It's just the one you happen to wake up inside of, surface right out of REM, and for a few seconds the footage is still sitting there in short-term memory, warm and grabbable. Stay under for another 20 minutes and float up gently, and it's gone before your eyes are even open. The dream you remember is mostly an accident of timing, which means the one you'd swear felt significant might just be the one with good luck and a badly timed alarm, which, by the way, is the one crack in the whole system and the reason dream journals work at all. Look, the trick isn't a better memory, it's interruption. If you wake and stay completely still, eyes closed, and don't let the day come flooding in, you can sometimes hold the dream in that warm, short-term space just long enough to walk it into words. The second you move, check your phone, start planning your morning, the editor boots up, the day writes over the night, and the dream is gone. People who remember dreams vividly are often, without realizing it, just doing this. They linger. They catch the footage in the half second before the cleanup crew finishes. Everyone else rolls over, grabs the phone, and hands the booth straight back to the deletion. But wait, you might be thinking, what about the bad ones? Because some dreams absolutely do stick. The nightmare that follows you into the kitchen. The one you can still feel 3 days later. And you're right, they're the exception that proves the rule. I mean, while most of the recording booth goes dark in REM, the brain's threat and emotion system stays switched on, and it's good at slapping a bright label on anything that scares you. Fear is the one tag the system rarely throws away, because back when the world was genuinely trying to eat us, a dream rehearsal of danger was worth keeping. So the dreams most likely to beat the deletion are the ones soaked in fear or raw emotion, which is, a slightly grim reason your happiest dreams vanish, while the one about your teeth crumbling sticks around for a week. Okay, but here's the question I actually came here for. If forgetting is this much work, if your brain is building dedicated machinery and burning energy to erase the thing it just spent 2 hours making, then somewhere back in our deep history that machinery had to be selected for. It had to, well, earn its place. Which means, at some point, forgetting your dreams was, in some strange way, useful. So when did the brain settle on that rule, and what was it protecting? Here, honestly, the evidence gets thinner, and I'd rather say that out loud than pretend otherwise. You can't run a sleep lab on a creature that died 100 million years ago, but the theories are worth turning over in your hand. Back in the early 1980s, one idea landed that a lot of people found almost insulting at first. The claim was that we don't dream in spite of the forgetting. We dream in order to forget. Here's the thinking behind it. Basically, your brain is a pattern machine, and every single day it soaks up a flood of overlapping, half-useful, accidental connections. Left untouched, that clutter would pile up, and the system would slowly start seeing patterns that aren't really there. So the proposal was that REM sleep runs a kind of nightly purge, firing through those tangled links and weakening the junk, so you wake with a cleaner signal and less noise. The dreams, in that view, are just what the process feels like from the inside while the brain takes out the trash. All that vividness and strangeness and feeling, and then pointedly not saved, because saving the cleanup would defeat the whole point of cleaning. And if that sounds abstract, here's a homelier version. Think of how your phone's autocorrect learns from you. Useful, until it overlearns one weird typo you made at 2 a.m. and starts shoving it into every message. A brain that kept every dream would be a bit like that. Overtrained on noise, confidently wrong, finding meaning in coincidences that were only ever static. The nightly forgetting, in this view, is the brain refusing to overlearn from its own late-night nonsense. And there's a clue about all this, hiding in the very start of life. Newborn babies spend a huge slice of their sleep, by some estimates around half of it, in REM, far more than you do now. A developing fetus may run higher still. Now, look, a newborn almost certainly isn't dreaming about its mortgage. So all that REM probably isn't there to entertain anybody. The leading guess is that this is the brain wiring itself up, REM as a kind of construction phase, firing circuits, testing connections, building the machine, before there's much of a life to record. Which fits the whole picture a little eerily. The dream state shows up earliest and strongest at exactly the point in life when there's the least worth remembering, which is a quiet hint that it was never really built to be kept in the first place. Okay, so stack it all up. A dream state that arrives before you even have a self to lose. Chemistry that refuses to record. A circuit built to erase. An editor asleep at the desk. None of that reads like a system that wants to keep your dreams and keeps fumbling the job. It reads like a system tuned, slowly, and with nobody in charge, to let you live the night and then quietly walk away from it. Which finally makes the original question answerable. When did your brain decide dreams weren't worth keeping? Long, long before there was a you to ask. The decision is older than your memory, older than your language, probably older than our whole species. You just inherited the setting. And this cleanup crew really is, well, ancient. REM sleep, or something close to it, shows up across mammals and in birds too, which tells us the basic machinery was already running long before anything like us stood up and started worrying about it. Your dog, twitching its legs against the kitchen floor at 2 in the afternoon, is running a version of the very same nightly process. There was no committee, no vote, no clever ancestor who woke one morning and chose to start forgetting on purpose. It was slow. It was statistical. Brains that wasted storage clinging to every dream did just slightly worse than brains that cleared the desk by morning. Run that tiny advantage across millions of years, generation after generation, and you end up with a brain that treats its own dreams as temporary by default. Yours, tonight. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, fine, but I've got that one friend who remembers every dream in full cinematic detail and will absolutely tell you about all of them. And you're right, people genuinely do differ. Honestly, some of it comes down to how often you happen to surface near morning, because more brief wake-ups mean more chances to catch a dream mid-air. Some of it seems to track with the wiring up front, that same editor region we talked about. So if you barely remember your dreams, it doesn't mean you aren't having them. You're having your 4 to 6 a night, same as everyone. You're just a remarkably efficient cleaner. And here's a small, strange piece of evidence that the deletion is never quite total. Have you ever woken up in a bad mood for no reason you can name? Vaguely uneasy, or oddly tender, with nothing in the room to explain it. There's decent reason to think that's a dream you can't recall, still leaking its emotional residue into your morning. The story got wiped, the feeling didn't fully clear the building. So even the cleanup crew, efficient as it is, sometimes leaves a smudge on the glass. You lose the footage of the dream, but some of the weather it arrived in still hangs around your morning. And here's where it stops being a fact about sleep, and starts being a fact about you. Because that nightly deletion has been running your entire life. Every night since before you could speak, this system has been making thousands of tiny calls about what stays and what disappears, and not once were you asked. You dreamed a whole second life. You felt things in it that were, in the moment, as real as anything you've felt awake. You lived it, and then it was just lifted away, gently, before you could carry any of it across into morning. And multiply that by every night you've been alive, and the number turns quietly enormous. There's a vast, vivid, deeply felt shadow life that belongs to you, that is built entirely out of you, and that you will never once get to see. The brain settled this long before you showed up. You don't get to keep it. And honestly, that should sit a little strangely in your chest. But before you climb into bed tonight feeling robbed, let me hand you the other lens, because I think it's closer to the truth. That deletion isn't the brain being careless with you. I mean, going by everything we've just looked at, it might be the brain being kind. Just picture what it would be like if it didn't forget. You'd wake every morning genuinely unsure whether you'd lost a tooth, fallen off a roof, or said goodbye for the last time to someone who is, in fact, downstairs making coffee. The dream and the day would bleed into one unreliable smear, and you'd spend your whole life unable to trust your own past. So your brain quietly cut a deal on your behalf, a very long time ago. It lets you slip somewhere impossible every night, feel all of it, live an entire hidden story, and then it closes the door softly behind you and keeps that room a secret, even from you. So the single life you wake up sure of is the one that actually happened. So tonight, when the lights go off and you drift away into somewhere that doesn't exist, you don't have to grieve the part you won't remember. You were never meant to keep the dream. You were only ever meant to keep yourself. If this is the kind of question you like to lie awake on, stick around. There's a fresh one here twice a week. Same world, different lens.